Hey worlders, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma and welcome to Bookmas Day 8, I believe. It is time for one of my favorite videos to watch other people do on YouTube, and it is my stats video. I talked 2 days ago, I don't know, in one of my last videos I talked about my goals for 2022, and I talked about how reading more diversely is continuing to be a goal for me, and it is, especially looking at my stats. There are some things that I don't love that I'm seeing, and we'll talk more about it when I get to those points within this video. But I'm excited to do this video all the less. Is that right? All the less? Or is it all the more? I think it's all the more. I'm excited to do this video all the more. That doesn't sound right either. I don't know. So I'm going to be sharing my stats in two ways. One will be some of the Goodreads year in review stats that they do up on Goodreads, but I don't love Goodreads stats because I myself personally am really bad at remembering to like change that the book I read was audio. So when you look at my actual like Goodreads reading year in review kind of thing, it has it that I read double the pages that I actually read this year. So for the last 2 years, I've been using a spreadsheet that Allie from the hardback... Where did that cough come from? Hold on, I just died. I need a second to not die. Alright, I don't know where I cut the edit, but I do know that I did just cut the coughing fit I just had out of the video. So if my eyes look really red, it's because I just had this like huge cough that came out of nowhere. But that cough was just, it was something else, guys. Something else. Anyways. For the last few years, I've been using Allie from the Hardback Hoarders reading spreadsheet that she does every year. It is an amazing one. She doesn't always share the video publicly, so I do recommend like following her on different social medias for when she like maybe drops a link if she's doing it again this year. I will link her down below. Hi guys, I just want to quickly update. So from what I've seen on Twitter, it does look like Allie is not making a new spreadsheet this year. I'm still going to link her channel down below, so maybe you can find past year's spreadsheets if you want to use one. I'll also link her Twitter down below because I think she's going to tweet out links to her old ones. But yeah, I'm still going to link her. I still love her spreadsheets. So you can if you would like, because those are ones that I can actually input the information myself. So I feel like those statistics are more accurate than the Goodreads statistics, but at the same time, I find like the facts about like what is the longest book and what is the shortest book read during the year really interesting. What's the popular and least popular book? I find those interesting. So yeah, I'm going to start by sharing my statistics from Allie the Hardback Hoarders spreadsheet first, and then I will go through and I will do my Goodreads ones as well. Also, if I'm looking down, I have my stats on my phone. I did not memorize my stats, so just forgive me in advance. So to start this year, my goal was to read 21 books, and I ended up completing 31 books this year, but I DNF'd, like I hard DNF'd 33, I believe, or not 33. I didn't hard DNF 33 books. 3 books, so it brought me to 31 total ones on the Allie Hardback Hoarder spreadsheet, because that's the other thing. I did track my DNFs on Allie's, but I didn't put them into Goodreads yet, because I don't want to do that until the 31st. Like, when I'm done with all of my videos, I will then just like say that I completed those books on Goodreads, but I don't want to like see that I like DNF'd a book that's really popular or something. Like, it's probably just going to end up nowhere, but you know, I just didn't want it in my stats for this video and such. Anyways, according to Allie's algorithm though, I did read 167% of my goal, which I don't know, I think that's really cool. When it goes over 100 for goals, I don't know, maybe it's just me being dumb. I also will, when applicable, put the graphs up for you guys. Some of them, like if you watch some of my wrap-ups, sometimes I'll throw them up if I do stats, but some of them I don't. Anyways, moving on. Did I also say that this video is going to have all the books I read? I probably didn't, but that is true. I will put all the books that I read this year in this video as well, and I'll have timestamps down below if you're like only looking for certain things. Alright, now let's really get started. I read this year 6,202 pages and listened to 168.86 hours of audio across 35, oh I guess it was 35, oops, 35 different books. 8 of those books were rereads, and also during the year of 2022 I did acquire 28 books. I'm not 100% sure that's completely accurate because sometimes I would buy books and forget to put it into my tracker, so there's a chance I might have acquired more, but 28 does sound somewhat correct. At the beginning of 2021, I owned 76 unread books. I only read 10 of the books that I owned in the beginning of 2021, which came out to 13.16%. That is a goal that I didn't put in my goals video the other day, but I would like to say that in 2022, I would like it to be a higher number of books that I read, or like a higher percentage. But then I also have to think about the fact that some of those books were audiobooks within that 35, so like that would have made it a little bit lower. So maybe next year I also will like sit down and do the math and figure out of like the physical books, what percentage of them did I actually read, but I'm not going to do that today. When it comes to the months and the books that I read, I did not have the best reading year this year. I've been somewhat candid about that in the last few videos. My highest reading month was September with 6 books. Also, if I can remember how to, you guys should be seeing like a screen, a graph that's like, it shows the audio and the physical like in the bar graph. So you guys are being able, like you guys are able to see, but I think that September was a very heavy audiobook month, or might have been completely audio. I know one of the high months was completely audio. December, I really got back into the swing of reading though. Hopefully we can bring that into the new year, and it is up there as one of my higher months. Ideally, I do think that I should be able to read 5 books in a month. That is what ideally I think I should be able to read, but you guys know I like to remind everyone that life does get in the way sometimes, so life gets in the way. I am disappointed that there are 2 months that I read 0 books or completed 0 books. I would, in like my brain, like to believe that some of those DNFs were read in March and October, and that's why there are zeros there, but I'm not really sure if that's true or not. Moving on to the formats of the books that I read this year. 14 books that I read this year were audio, 0 were ebooks. I don't read ebooks ever. It's just not for me. And 19 of them were physical. So I am still riding the line where I'm not quite 50-50, but I am doing pretty well. Oh wait, I just realized we can do some easy math. So I actually read 52.6% of the physical books I read this year were books that I own this year. So that makes me feel better than the stat we looked at a few minutes ago. But yeah, I'm not surprised. I think I always will read a little bit more physical than I will audio, but either way, I'm consuming books and I'm happy about it. This year's audience, I think, was the one that surprised me the most. I did do a reread of a number of the Harry Potter books. I didn't finish the series, I got distracted, but I did do a reread of a number of the Harry Potter books, which is kind of how this graph ended up the way that it was. But I read 9 books intended for adults, 5 middle grade, 5 new adult books, and 14 books intended for YA. I do look at it though that I pretty much read 50-50 adult and YA, because I feel like new adult often can get clumped in with adult, and it's just like that very fine line, the difference between new adult and adult. So I still feel like that's 50-50, and I feel like that is very accurate with how I look at books. I feel like if I sat down and I looked at my 3 books on the Radar series and I like broke it up by how many adults were on it and how many YAs, it would probably still come out to about 50-50. And I am still enjoying YA books. When I no longer enjoy them, I will stop reading them. Like, there's like a level of YA, and I just can't figure out the right way to describe it, that I have grown out of. For the most part, I am still enjoying YA books, so I'm going to continue to read them, and that's fine for me. The next section I have is owned voices. I am not 100% sure still how to define owned voices, so I'm not 100% sure how accurate this statistic is. The way I broke it down though was that I read 6 books that I'm pretty sure would be considered own voices, and 29 were books that I wouldn't necessarily define as own voices. I don't know how much I'm going to track this next year because, like I said, I struggle with what the definition of it is. And even when I've like researched it, it still doesn't 100% make sense to me. When it came from where I read my books from, 9 of the books I read this year were from Audible, but most of them I owned. I did read 1 book of the month. I am not proud of that. I do need to get up on my book of the month rating, or my book of the month reading, and I did borrow 1 book this year from a friend. I borrowed The Wives by Taryn Fisher, and I will be talking about that in one of my next videos because it is one of my favorite books of the year. When it came to how the books were published, I'm 95% sure that every book I read this year was traditionally published. This is another one that I don't necessarily pay that much attention to how it's published. I just pay attention to the fact that I read it. I know I should probably be reading more indie authors, especially as someone who does want to write and may one day decide that self-publishing is the route that I want to go, but for the most part, I'm pretty sure I'm still reading traditionally published books. And then my series stats. This one I don't know why, but I just find it interesting. But this year I read 7 companion novels, which if I'm going to read a series, most likely I'm going to read companion novels and not series that like you need to read in order, but I'm still going to read the companion novels in the order that they were released, if that makes sense. I read 10 books that were part of a series, which now I guess messes up the stat that I'm like, yeah, I totally mainly read companion novels. According to this, I don't. So there's that. I also had no idea that I read that many series this year, and I'm like trying to remember what series I read this year. Like I can think of 2 off the top of my head, 3, but that would be companions. I don't know. Like I believe that stat, I just can't, I don't know. And then I read 16 standalones. I do think that standalones are my favorite, but it's also because of the fact that primarily I read romances and I read thrillers, which both primarily are standalones. There are series, there are companion novels, but my primary interest is thrillers and contemporary romances. So, alright, moving on. We're going to look at the star ratings for this year. So my highest, so to start out, any rereads that I do not rate. So that is why the highest looks like I do not rate any of them, and it's because of the fact that they were all rereads. I did 8 rereads this year, so I didn't rate any of those. But the next highest would be 3 stars and 4 stars, which makes complete sense to me. I do kind of hover between that. For me, personally, a 2-star book is a book that I almost DNF'd, but I chugged through. That is a 2-star. I rarely rate 1 stars. Like 1 stars would have to be the book that like was gonna be a 2-star and then the ending just completely wrecked me. But like I don't normally make myself sit through something that I would rate 1 star. And then a 5-star for me, like it's just a tough rating for me to give something a 5-star. I'm like thinking about what I would say in a wrap up. There has to be like little to no issues that I had with the book, or I have to have liked it enough that I can overlook those issues. I know I just talked about The Wives a second ago, so I'm going to use that as an example. I did rate that book 5 stars. I had issues with the book, but I enjoyed it enough that I could overlook the issues. Whereas The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I have little to no issues with it at all. So that's why the 2 of them are both 5 stars. And then the fact that I only gave like 1 book 4.5 and 1 book 2 stars doesn't surprise me either. Allie the Hardback Hoarder's graph or spreadsheet, I can do half stars. That's the other reason that I'm not a huge fan of Goodreads, because they don't have half stars and I feel like it messes up my average rating. I did actually look because I was curious, and my rating according to Allie is 0.02% lower than the Goodreads average. So it probably isn't as different as I feel like it is in my brain. Moving on to the publication years, my two highest publication years are 2019 and 2020. That makes sense to me. Those are the books that I'm most likely going to gravitate towards because they are the ones that are fresh in my mind. But that is also followed very closely by, again, 2018, 2017, same kind of thing. I do have like a decent amount of books this year from like the 90s and early 2000s. I would say that had to do with the fact that I did do some rereads this year, including the Harry Potter series, which would be coming out during those years. I don't have much else to say about that. When it came to genres read, my highest percentage is romance, which nobody should be surprised by. Like I said, that is probably the highest genre that I hang out with, as well as contemporary. What does surprise me is how high fantasy is this year. Fantasy is the third highest genre for me. It does have to do with the fact that I did reread Harry Potter though, and I think I read, so it would have been Harry Potter, would have been 5 of them. I read the sequel to The Babysitter's Coven was this year, so that would have been one of them. What would have been the 7th one? I can't remember what the 7th one would have been, but there definitely would have been a 7th one, obviously. And then I'm shocked by how small mystery and thriller is, but I feel like it would have been higher if I combined that. No, maybe not. It would have only been 4. I don't know. I do love mystery thriller, but for some reason they're just not racking up this year, I guess. I think I read a lot of thrillers at the end of the year, and I do like thrillers. I put them on my TBR. I do buy them, but yeah. This tracking sheet also had an ability to track your subgenres. So my highest subgenres this year was a 3-way tie with romance, contemporary, and magic. Is anybody surprised? Because I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm a little surprised by the magic. When it came to my author stats, first I have author identity. I love that this year Allie included so many different types of gender identity. She had agender, bigender, gender fluid, gender queer, he, him, intersex, she, her, they, them, transgender, and unknown. I loved that as someone who is trying to diversify in that area too. It gave me a lot to think about, and it also helped me figure out like matching pronouns that I would find in like Instagram bios. I always say that my author stats are the ones that I'm most unsure about because some of this information can be hard to find online. But I'm not super proud of my gender breakdown. I still read 90.9% female authors who use she, her pronouns. And then I read one person who was genderqueer, one person that used he, him, and then one person that used they, them. I try my best to find, I look at the authors, like the author biography. What are those called? I don't think they're called author biographies. The like about the author in the back of the book, and I'll look at the pronouns used. I typically will go to like their Instagram and see if they've put their pronouns in their Instagram, or I'll go to their website. So I'm never sure 100% if what I'm tracking is the accurate gender. I always tell people when I do my wrap-ups, if they know something I don't, to let me know. I'm more than happy to change it and remember for future uses when I'm talking about the author, the correct pronouns. I also know that gender is a fluid thing, so there also is a chance that the author just uses multiple different pronouns, and I'm trying to learn. When it came to author's race, this year I did better than I've done in the past, but I still have a long way to go because I still read 84.8% white authors, and I think it is something that I just want to be more aware of moving forward. So I did better than I have in the past, but I still have a ways to go, and that is something that I'm just going to continue to work on. And then finally, the author status. I read one debut this year, and unfortunately I have soft to hard DNF'd. I haven't 100% decided if I will read the rest of the book or not. I read 19 authors who I've read before and 13 authors who I've never read before. Those numbers might not make complete sense with like the 35, but some of the DNFs I put all the information in for, some of them I didn't. I'm still I mean, I think I'm always going to gravitate towards authors I've read before, but if a book sounds good, I'm going to read it anyways, so it just kind of depends, you know? Those are all the stats from the spreadsheet I used from Allie. I am going to talk a little bit about my Goodreads stats though, like I said. So the first thing I want to talk about is the shortest and the longest books that I read this year. Starting out, my shortest book I read this year was Tears of a Tiger by Sharon M. Draper, which came in at 180 pages. Yeah, it was short and I should have been able to read it in like 2 sittings and it took me a few days, but that's okay. I cried at the end. I still love it. It's probably still one of my top 5 favorite books. And I also had a concussion during the time that I was reading it, so I wasn't going to read when I had headaches regularly. And then the longest book I read this year was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling, which came in at 870 pages. My average book length this year was 390 pages. That does not surprise me in the least. Feels very accurate even though it's coming off of Goodreads, and like I said, I don't necessarily trust Goodreads stats. This one does feel relatively accurate. When it came to the most popular and the least popular book this year, the most popular book was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone with 10,235,511 other people having read it. I don't think anyone is surprised that Harry Potter is still coming in with such a high popularity rate. I do want to say, and I've said in a few other videos, I don't support anything that J.K. Rowling has said in the past. I don't agree with anything. For me, it is very much a situation of love the art, hate the artist, because Harry Potter, like for many other people, was just such a huge part of my childhood. I also work in an elementary school. Students I worked with, especially last school year, more so than this school year, were obsessed with Harry Potter, and I was constantly talking to them about it, and I just wanted to go back into that world for a little bit. As a 27-year-old, I do see a lot of the issues that I didn't see when I was younger, and I think it's very complicated to have a relationship with the Harry Potter books, more so now than when you were younger. And then when it came to the least popular book that I read this year, it was the sequel to The Babysitter's Coven, For Better or Worse, which only 3,360 other people read. This one I think surprised me more so than others. Like, I would have thought like Tears of a Tiger would have been less popular than this one. I loved The Babysitter's Coven. It was great. I did not really like For Better or Curse. I said in one of my most recent videos that I would like to read the trilogy ending. Hold on, I gotta change my battery. I was saying that I do want to read the 3rd book in the trilogy. If I can find it, I probably will buy it. I don't think I'm gonna be like searching everywhere for it, but I do want to finish the series because I just really enjoyed the first one. I really enjoyed the first one, and I don't know what it was about the second one. But to me also, the covers are always gorgeous. I love the covers. Finally, the highest rated book that I read this year, according to other Goodreads readers, was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which had an average rating of 4.56. This again doesn't surprise me. For most people I know, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is most people's favorite books. It was really good during my time rereading it, and yeah. And now for the final section of this video. This has been a long video. I'm going to tell you guys all the books that I read in 2021. I'm going to read them somewhat in order. They're kind of the order they're in here though. So yeah, let's get started. Escaping Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. Love Life in the List by Casey West. For Better or Worse by Kate Williams. Once Upon a Dream by Liz Braswell. The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. Always and Forever Lara Jean by Jenny Han, which was a reread. Written in the Stars by Alexandra Bellafleur. Something to Talk About by Mary Wilsner. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling, which was a reread. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling, which was a reread. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling, which was a reread. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling, which was a reread. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling, which was a reread. They Used to Love Me by K.A. Tucker. One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Her Dark Lies, which was a DNF. The Perfect First, which was a DNF. Love Rosie by Cecilia Ahern. All We Can Do Is Wait by Richard Lawson. Amy Chelsea Stacy D by Mary G. Thompson. Top 10 by Katie Contugno. Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. Fame, Fate, and the First Kiss by Casey West. The Chase by Elle Kennedy. The Risk by Elle Kennedy. The Play by Elle Kennedy. The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Warbell. Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, which is somewhere between a soft DNF and a hard DNF. The Wives by Taryn Fisher. Better Off Friends by Elizabeth Olberg. Tears of a Tiger by Sharon M. Draper, which was a reread. Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. And The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which was a reread. And those are all the books that I read in 2021. I'm very excited for 2022. I do love the end of this video where I read all the books that I read, or I like list all the books that I read during the year off. That is something that I do really enjoy with making this video. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Let me know in the comments down below something about your stats. Anything about your stats I would love to hear. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, Worlders. I don't know. I'm gonna start over. What was I going to say? Yeah, that's the last one. Escaping Houdini.